Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. Today, we're going to dig into a book that helps us see the hidden operating system running behind the scenes of our politics. And why does that matter? Well, because it offers a really powerful new way to understand the instability so many of us are feeling in democracies today. It helps us shift our focus from the frantic daily headlines to the actual code that's running in the background. All right, so the book is The Condition of Democracy, Volume 1, and it's edited by Jürgen Machert, Hannah Wolf, and Brian S. Turner. It's basically a collection of different sociological perspectives that take a hard look at why democracy so often feels like it's in a state of crisis. But the real kicker here is that instead of just listing the symptoms, this collection asks us to look under the hood at the root causes.
I mean, we all see the symptoms, right? The rise of populist movements, the constant political gridlock, this general feeling of instability. The book starts by acknowledging that, democratic institutions everywhere are really being tested. It can feel like the ground is shifting under our feet. But here's the big question it poses. What if these aren't just a bunch of isolated events? What if they're all connected to a much deeper, systemic change?
So instead of getting stuck on the symptoms, this book takes us under the hood. And the core argument is this. These problems aren't random malfunctions. They aren't bugs. They're actually the predictable results of a huge systemic transformation, one that's being driven by a very particular economic logic that is fundamentally changing how our democracies even function.
So what is this logic? The authors call it neoliberalism. Now, I know that's a loaded term, but the way the book defines it here is really important. It's not just a set of policies like low taxes or free markets. It's framed as a whole form of reasoning, an operating system, if you will, that insists market outcomes are not only better than, but should actually take priority over the democratic will of the people.
And boom, right there. That's the central conflict. When the logic of the market is treated as the ultimate authority, you get this incredible tension. What happens when what's good for the market is the exact opposite of what citizens actually want or need for their own communities? Well, according to this book, that's where the trouble really begins.
Okay, so how does this change actually happen? The book argues it's not some direct frontal assault on democracy. No, it's much more subtle. It's a gradual reshaping of the incentives and the constraints within the system itself. So let's take a look at a couple of the key patterns that the authors have identified. So the first pattern is this slow, steady shift of decision-making power. It moves away from the people we actually vote for, our elected representatives, and it moves towards financial markets and unelected technical experts. A huge part of this is that it often happens quietly, without public scrutiny. It's all happening in the background. Now, this shift creates a really powerful feedback loop. Policies that might actually benefit wealthy people or corporations get justified not because they're popular, but because they're framed as being technically necessary for economic stability. The book argues that this basically opens the door for what it calls an open politics for the rich, where their interests just get prioritized over everyone else's. The second pattern flows directly from that first one. As this market-first logic gets more and more dominant, the range of what we consider acceptable political solutions starts to shrink. Ideas that challenge this logic, even really popular ones, just get dismissed out of hand as being unrealistic or irresponsible or just plain impossible. The book calls this process de-democratization, which is a fancy way of saying the arena for actual democratic debate is getting smaller and smaller.
To really help us wrap our heads around this, the book offers a new and really powerful metaphor. It asks us to stop thinking about democracy just in terms of its ideals, and to start looking at it in terms of its actual day-to-day operations. And honestly, seeing it this way is a total game changer.
The metaphor is this: democracy as a constrained operating environment. Think about that for a second. It's just like the operating system on your computer or your phone. It has rules. It has limits. It determines which programs can even run and what they're allowed to do. Well, the book's argument is that the same thing is happening to democracy now that it's running on this new economic software. So this comparison really nails the shift in perspective. The traditional view is that democracy is a big, open forum to express what people want. But this new, systemic view suggests that democracy has become a system that can really only hear and respond to inputs that are already compatible with its underlying economic operating system. And you can imagine that has massive implications for how we even think about political change. So where does that leave us? What do we do with this new lens? Once you start seeing democracy as a system, as an operating environment, how does that actually change how you interpret the political world around you? Well, here's the key takeaway. It completely reframes how you see political crisis. Instead of seeing all this instability as just the failure of individual politicians or certain parties, you can start to see it as a predictable, maybe even a logical outcome of a system that's operating under these incredibly powerful constraints. It's not just about the players anymore, it's about the rules of the game itself, and that changes everything.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty deep question to reflect on. If democracy really is an operating system and it's being shaped by all these powerful forces in the background, then what are the constraints on yours? It's not an easy question for sure, but it's a crucial one to ask if we really want to understand the challenges that democracies are facing today. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis and Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.